Robert Spencer here for Jihad Watch, here to discuss the totalitarian impulse. In a certain sense, all of human history is a struggle between the individual and the collective, and I think that may at no time be more true than now. As I recently experienced on a trip to Iceland, I was invited to speak in Iceland at a number of private events, as well as at one large public event. The event was very well attended. There were 500 people there, which, when you consider that Iceland has a population of 300,000, would be like having an audience of 500,000 people at some event in the United States. So it was a very major event and a big success. However, it came amid a cloud of negative publicity. Now, of course, I'm used to negative publicity, but in Iceland it was really extraordinary. All of the Icelandic press, for some time before I arrived in the country, had printed story after story about what a terrible man I am, how I inspired a murderer, and how I was listed as a hate group leader, and so on. All these charges are false, based on half-truths or tendentious misrepresentations of reality, but they were the only thing that Icelanders learned about me in the run-up to the event. So really, it was remarkable that 500 people were out there to see someone whom they had been led to believe was essentially the equivalent of Adolf Hitler come to speak to them. But they did. They braved the opprobrium, and they came, and the event was a big success. However, after the event, as any speaker will know, it's a certain kind of exuberance, exhilaration, and the other speaker, Ms. Christine Williams, another Jihad Watch writer, and I, along with our security man and the event organizers, went to a local restaurant there in Reykjavik to celebrate. At that point, a young man, an Icelander, came up to me and he said, "Mr. Spencer," and he shook my hand. He said he was a big fan, and he walked away. And shortly thereafter, another Icelander came up, also addressed me by name, and he said something that I would prefer not to repeat in this video, but which you can find in print sources. And it was not a kind word. In any case, at that point we thought it might be a good idea to leave. We left the area, and I went back to my hotel. When I was in my hotel room, I suddenly started to feel quite ill. Numbness in the face, nausea, ultimately vomiting, and other symptoms that were very clear that something was clearly wrong. My security man took me to the hospital, and there I had a racing heartbeat, high blood pressure, all sorts of terrible things going on, was there throughout the night, and tests showed that I had been poisoned. Now, it seems to me likely that the young man who actually came up and said he was a big fan was not really a big fan and had actually put the poison into my drink. This was because he was closer. He came right up to the table, whereas the other man who said the unkind word was farther away. So the fellow who said he was a well-wisher is the primary suspect. Now, if you put yourself in his shoes for a minute, imagine this is somebody in Iceland. Iceland is a fairly remote country in terms of the public debate that is going on in Europe and North America today about the jihad threat, about Muslim immigration, and so on. And it is a place that prides itself on civilized behavior, on people who are friendly and kind, and so on. And certainly it's a country of great natural beauty. But this young man, like almost all Icelanders, had only heard that I was a terrible, racist, bigoted Islamophobe. He only had heard negative things, that I had done all these terrible things and was responsible for even more, with no possibility of rebuttal. No Icelandic media outlet reached out to me at all. And so he only heard the one side. So he thought, this is a real notorious international villain who is coming to our shores. Now, why does the establishment media, that is controlled, of course, by the national and international left, engage in this kind of thing? Why didn't anybody contact me for comment and rebuttal? Why didn't anyone think, well, maybe the idea that he incited violence for these murders in Norway is false, considering the reality that the murderer himself scolded him, me that is, for not inciting violence, for not calling for violence. Things like this were not asked. Why is it that the establishment media was so bent on giving what was a manifestly unfair and one-sided presentation? Now, I think Mark Stein summed this up best in an article that he wrote about the poisoning incident that I went through in Iceland. And he said that the left and the Muslim spokesmen in the West generally tend to shy away from debate because they are too stupid to defend their own positions. Now that's unkind. Admittedly, that's an uncharitable thing to say. But really, what other face can you put on it? They say we will not discuss the valid points you raise. We will not even allow you a fair hearing, and we will portray you in the most lurid and negative terms possible. And you understand this isn't personal. Certainly, it happens to me. But it happens to every one of my colleagues also who speak honestly about the motivating ideology behind the international jihad threat. And so, what are we to make of this? It seems to me that the left, intellectually bereft, and Muslim spokesmen who know that what we're saying about the Quran and Sunnah is true, the only thing they can do is to try to shut us up, to get us canceled, to get us shut down, and they engage in character assassination in order to accomplish that goal. They try to make it out that we are people who are beyond the pale of acceptable discourse. And of course, most people who are in positions of minor authority, who are running banquet halls or hotels or restaurants with the halls where people can speak, they're afraid of controversy. They don't want picketers outside their establishment, and so they cave into this kind of pressure. And that's exactly what it's for. So the idea is to engage in character assassination to the extent that people are afraid to deal with us. People are afraid to read our books. People are afraid to consider what we have to say on its face. They're afraid to consider the rational argumentation that we make on its merits, because they're afraid of the opprobrium that will come to them as it has come to us if they do so. They're afraid of being accused, as we are constantly accused, of racism, bigotry, Islamophobia, and the rest. And so, most of the time, they succeed and they shut us down. And the platforms in this age of cowardice are indeed diminishing. But in Iceland, the organizers went ahead and they brought me there, but they brought me there amid this chorus of disapproval, defamation, smears, slander, and libel. So the inevitable result was that this young man, having read some or all of these accounts, happened to see me in this restaurant, the Kaya Kaffihus in Reykjavik, and he thought, now is my chance. And he happened, as so many young people do today, to have illegal drugs on his person, and he was able to slip them into my drink by coming up and pretending to be a well-wisher. Now, this is, I think, the next result, and what we see as the next level of the left's program to disgrace, discredit, and thereby silence everybody who points out the falsity of the establishment positions. And that is, the next level is the move from character assassination to assassination, pure and simple. I don't know if this young man intended to kill me or just to make me violently ill. He certainly succeeded in the latter. He did not succeed in the former, as far as I know. However, the lesson to be learned is that if we are not forcibly silenced, if these forces of totalitarian control do not succeed in demonizing us so thoroughly that nobody has the courage to host us, and if they cannot silence us, if 500 brave Icelanders will still come out, despite the social disapproval that they will incur, to hear what we have to say, then the next level has to kick in, and that is, you have to take out the person who is threatening by speaking the truth. Of course, we've seen this in Europe before. We have not seen this so much in the United States, but I guarantee you we certainly will in the coming years. We know that Theo van Gogh, made a film about the mistreatment of Muslim women, and he was murdered on an Amsterdam street by a Muslim. Even more disquieting was the murder, even a couple of years before that, of Pim Fortuyn, a Dutch politician who spoke out against Sharia oppression and was murdered by a leftist who said, I am doing this for Dutch Muslims. It was also a non-Muslim leftist, as far as I know, or possibly a convert to Islam, although I've looked at his Facebook page. Everybody knows everybody in Iceland, and I was easily able to get the young man's identity, although as far as I know he has not been arrested or charged, because of course the Icelandic government and police is also far to the left, and I don't expect that any justice will be done in this case. But in any case, I looked at the young man's Facebook page, and there was no indication either that he was a real fan of mine, or that he had any kind of well-formed political views, or that he had any particular interest in Islam as such, much less that he was a convert. I think that he was a leftist who thought that he was doing the right thing for the multicultural, harmonious future that the left keeps telling people it is bringing about by bringing in huge numbers of Muslims into the countries of Europe and eventually North America. This is, as I say, something that we were going to see much more of. Not just character assassination of foes of jihad terror and Sharia oppression, but outright assassination. And it is coming. I escaped it in Reykjavik. Maybe I will escape it in the future, maybe not. Maybe others will escape it in the future, maybe not. But we see this is the ultimate end point of the totalitarian impulse. The left is not interested in free discussion or debate, and neither, for that matter, are Sharia adherent Muslims, because Sharia forbids criticism of Islam and mandates death for blasphemy, apostasy, heresy, and so on. And so, you have two great forces, the left and the House of Islam, that are committed to violent death for those who oppose them and speak out against them. And we have seen this in regard to the far left whenever they take power, and the reigns of terror that prevailed in France, in Russia, in China, in Vietnam, and elsewhere, when the left took power, certainly in Cambodia. And so these two impulses coalesce, and it results in the violent suppression of all dissenting voices. I got a small taste of it in Iceland, and others will too. I am sorry to have to bring this kind of warning to you, but there is nothing that is more certain than that the totalitarian impulse will continue to try to kill those whom it cannot refute and cannot otherwise silence. I'm Robert Spencer. Thank you.